What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want was the way you think? Not your background, not your resources, not your luck, your mindset, because high performers don't have more time, more talent, or fewer problems. They have a different internal standard. They think differently under pressure. They decide faster in chaos. They move when others hesitate. Today, you're going to learn what separates the ordinary from the unstoppable, not theory, not motivation that fades tomorrow. This is the high performance mindset, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Step 1, identity before achievement. Most people spend their lives chasing outcomes, money, success, recognition, confidence, without realizing that results are not something you pursue, they are something you express. You don't become confident because you win because you decided who you are long before the evidence appeared. Identity always comes first. The way you see yourself determines the actions you take when no one is watching, the standards you enforce when things get uncomfortable, and the choices you make when fear whispers that you should stay small. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will hesitate. If you see yourself as someone who does, you will move even when uncertainty is high. High performers do not wait for permission from circumstances. They do not wait for validation, approval, or perfect conditions to feel ready. They choose an identity in advance and then behave in alignment with it until the world has no choice but to respond. When you shift your identity, your behavior changes automatically. You stop negotiating with excuses because excuses no longer match who you believe you are. You stop asking whether something is possible and start asking what it will take because your self-image demands a higher level of action. The reason most goals fail is not lack of discipline or motivation. It is identity conflict. People set goals that their identity cannot sustain. They say they want success, but they still see themselves as someone who avoids discomfort. They want growth, but they identify as someone who plays it safe. Under pressure, identity always wins. You will unconsciously sabotage outcomes that threaten the way you see yourself, even if those outcomes are exactly what you say you want. To change results permanently, you must redefine who you are at the deepest level, not in words, but in standards. Identity is reinforced by what you tolerate, what you walk away from, and what you refuse to compromise. Every small decision is a vote for the person you are becoming. When you consistently act in alignment with a stronger identity, confidence stops being something you seek and becomes something you embody. You no longer chase achievement to prove your worth. Achievement becomes the natural byproduct of who you've decided to be under pressure, in discipline, and in moments when quitting would be easier. Step 2, emotional mastery under pressure. Pressure is the great separator. It reveals who has trained their inner world and who is controlled by it. Most people believe their emotions are reactions, automatic, uncontrollable responses to what happens around them. High performers understand a deeper truth. Emotions are signals, and signals can be directed. Under pressure, the body floods with intensity, uncertainty, and fear. But that energy is neutral until you assign meaning to it. The moment you label pressure as danger, your mind shuts down and survival takes over. When you label it as a challenge, focus sharpens and performance rises. Emotional mastery is not about suppressing feelings or pretending fear doesn't exist. It is about commanding your state so emotions work for you instead of against you. High performers train themselves to pause in moments of chaos, slow their breathing, and choose their response rather than react on impulse. They know that clarity is impossible when the nervous system is hijacked. By controlling physiology first, posture, breath, tone, they regain access to their best thinking. State always precedes strategy, and whoever controls their state controls the moment. Most people lose momentum not because they lack skill, but because they let temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. Frustration makes them quit early. Fear makes them hesitate. Stress makes them settle for less than they're capable of. High performers feel these emotions too, but they don't let them define the next action. They create emotional rules for themselves. No major decisions when overwhelmed, no retreat when fear appears, no lowering standards because the moment feels heavy. Pressure becomes a signal to raise focus, not to retreat. Under sustained pressure, meaning becomes everything. The same challenge can break one person and sharpen another depending on the story they tell themselves. High performers attach meaning that empowers them. Pain becomes feedback. Failure becomes training. Resistance becomes proof that growth is happening. By reframing pressure as preparation rather than punishment, they stay engaged when others emotionally collapse. Emotional mastery under pressure is built through repetition. Each time you stay calm when chaos demands panic, you strengthen the part of you that leads. Each time you choose focus over fear, you condition confidence at a deeper level. Over time, pressure stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling familiar, even welcome, because it signals that you are operating at the edge of your capacity where growth is unavoidable. Step 3. Relentless clarity of vision. Clarity is not a luxury, it is a performance requirement. Most people are not failing because they lack ability, they are failing because they are unclear. When the destination is vague, effort becomes scattered, motivation weakens, and discipline collapses under pressure. High performers operate with relentless clarity. They know exactly what they want, why it matters, and what success looks like in real terms. This level of precision eliminates confusion and replaces hesitation with direction because the mind performs best when it has a clear target to move toward. A clear vision acts as a filter for decisions. When you know where you're going, distractions lose their power. Opportunities that don't align are quickly dismissed, and energy is reserved for what actually moves the needle. Without clarity, everything feels urgent and important, which leads to burnout and shallow progress. High performers don't allow their attention to be fragmented. They define their priorities so sharply that daily actions become obvious, and momentum builds naturally through consistent focus rather than constant effort. Relentless clarity also fuels emotional resilience. When challenges arise, a strong vision prevents emotional derailment because the purpose is bigger than the discomfort. Instead of asking whether the struggle is worth it, the question becomes how to push through with intelligence and intensity. High performers revisit their vision daily, not to fantasize, but to reinforce commitment. They see the outcome so vividly that short-term pain loses its influence and long-term execution becomes non-negotiable. Clarity of vision is not static. It evolves through reflection and refinement. High performers regularly audit their direction, measuring progress honestly and adjusting strategies without abandoning the destination. They are flexible in how they move, but ruthless about where they are going. This combination of adaptability and certainty allows them to stay grounded during uncertainty because even when the path changes, the purpose remains intact. When vision is clear, identity strengthens, discipline sharpens, and action accelerates. You no longer waste energy convincing yourself to move forward because the direction is already decided. Doubt has no room to grow when the target is defined with precision, and consistency becomes easier when every action is connected to a larger, meaningful outcome that demands your full attention. Step 4. Discipline over comfort. Comfort is the silent enemy of progress. It feels harmless, even deserved, but over time, it quietly erodes ambition and dulls potential. Most people don't fail because life is too hard. They fail because comfort is too easy. High performers understand that every meaningful breakthrough requires a willingness to be uncomfortable on purpose. They don't wait until conditions feel right because comfort never produces growth. Discipline becomes the bridge between who they are today and who they are committed to becoming. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction or punishment, but at its core it is an act of self-respect. It is choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term relief, even when emotions argue otherwise. High performers train themselves to act based on standards, not moods. When the mind seeks ease, discipline steps in and redirects effort toward what matters most. This consistency builds trust with oneself, and self-trust becomes a powerful source of confidence that does not depend on external validation. Comfort seeks to avoid pain, effort, and uncertainty. Discipline accepts them as necessary components of growth. High performers don't eliminate discomfort, they reframe it as evidence that they are expanding their capacity. Each time they do the hard thing instead of the easy thing, they strengthen mental endurance. Over time, what once felt uncomfortable becomes familiar, and the comfort zone expands. This process compounds, turning daily discipline into a competitive advantage that most people are unwilling to develop. Choosing discipline over comfort also creates clarity. When you remove the option to quit, procrastinate, or negotiate with excuses, decisions become simpler. High performers reduce internal friction by pre-committing to actions before emotions get involved. They structure their environment, routines, and expectations in ways that support discipline automatically. This removes reliance on willpower and replaces it with systems that make consistency unavoidable. Discipline does not mean ignoring rest or balance, it means being intentional with energy. High performers recover with purpose so they can execute with intensity. They understand that comfort used strategically restores strength, but comfort used emotionally weakens resolve. By choosing discipline repeatedly, they shape an identity that no longer seeks ease as a priority. Comfort stops being the goal and becomes a byproduct of earned progress, built through deliberate effort and an unbreakable commitment to doing what is required, especially when it would be easier not to. Step 5. Massive action with precision. Action is the currency of results, but not all action is equal. Most people stay busy yet remain stuck because their effort lacks direction and intensity. High performers understand that progress comes from massive action taken with precision. They move fast but not recklessly. They act boldly but with clear intent. Instead of waiting for perfect plans, they execute, measure, adjust, and execute again, knowing that clarity often comes from movement, not contemplation. Massive action means refusing to stay in analysis paralysis. High performers do not overthink their way into confidence. They act their way into it. Speed creates momentum, and momentum strengthens belief. Every action provides feedback, and feedback sharpens strategy. Rather than fearing mistakes, they treat errors as data, using them to refine their approach. This bias toward action allows them to outpace more talented individuals who hesitate, because consistent execution compounds faster than potential left unused. Precision separates effective action from wasted effort. High performers identify the few actions that create the greatest impact and pour their energy into them relentlessly. They understand that success is not about doing more, but about doing what matters most with intensity and focus. Distractions are minimized, priorities are protected, and time is allocated deliberately. By aligning action with clear objectives, they avoid burnout while accelerating results. Massive action with precision also requires emotional discipline. High performers resist the urge to react impulsively or chase short-term wins that dilute long-term progress. They pause just long enough to ensure alignment, then commit fully. This balance of speed and thoughtfulness allows them to move decisively without sacrificing quality. When obstacles appear, they do not slow down. They adjust angles, improve execution, and increase intensity where it counts. Over time, this approach builds a powerful rhythm. Action becomes a habit rather than an event, and progress becomes predictable instead of accidental. High performers don't wait for motivation to strike, they generate motivation through consistent execution. Each decisive move reinforces identity, strengthens confidence, and sharpens judgment. Massive action taken with precision transforms ambition into measurable outcomes and separates those who talk about change from those who create it through relentless, focused execution under real-world conditions. Step 6. Standards that reject mediocrity. Standards are the invisible force shaping every result in your life. They determine what you tolerate, what you allow, and what you walk away from. Most people don't lack motivation or intelligence. They lack non-negotiable standards. They accept average performance, inconsistent effort, and excuses as normal, then wonder why progress feels slow. High performers live differently because they decide in advance what is acceptable and what is not, and they refuse to compromise those decisions when pressure or convenience tempts them to lower the bar. Rejecting mediocrity begins with internal standards before external results ever appear. High performers don't wait for success to demand excellence. They demand excellence as a condition for success. They raise expectations for their behavior, their preparation, and their response to adversity. This doesn't come from perfectionism, but from self-respect. When standards are high, excuses lose credibility. Comfort stops being persuasive. You no longer ask whether something is hard, you ask whether it aligns with the level you've committed to operate at. Most people negotiate with themselves in moments of fatigue or doubt. They lower standards temporarily and promise to raise them later, not realizing that every compromise reinforces an identity of inconsistency. High performers understand that standards are only powerful when they are enforced, especially when it would be easier not to. They do the work even when motivation fades. They prepare even when recognition is absent. And they show up with intensity when no one is watching. This consistency creates internal pride and external results that compound over time. High standards also shape environment and relationships. High performers are selective about what they allow into their mental space. They limit exposure to negativity, distraction, and influences that normalize mediocrity. They surround themselves with people and ideas that challenge their thinking and raise expectations. This intentional curation strengthens discipline and makes excellence the default rather than the exception. When standards are clear and uncompromising, decision-making becomes simpler. You no longer debate whether to act with integrity, effort, or focus because those behaviors are already decided. High performers don't rely on willpower in critical moments. They rely on standards that remove the option to settle. Mediocrity is rejected not through dramatic declarations, but through daily choices that reinforce a commitment to excellence, growth, and personal responsibility at a level most people are unwilling to maintain. This mindset is not built in comfort, it is forged in decision. Raise your standards, control your state, and act with precision every day. When identity leads and mediocrity is no longer an option, results have no choice but to follow.